What is up, everyone? Welcome to a new episode of Rock the Dragon, a Dragon Ball Daima podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Tim Bridgewater. So I'm experimenting here. If you listen to the previous episode, you know that I said that I was going to sort of experiment with the idea of just coming back from time to time with a new episode of the podcast when there's something to talk about, when there's something to discuss, whether that be something news related or an email or something like that I might receive. So if you'd like to send me an email, you can send me one for our email segment called What Are You Saying? At rockthedragonpodcast@gmail.com. And I was going to come back and stop putting as much pressure on myself to feel like I need to talk for an hour. Sometimes I can just come back and have a 15-minute episode, 20-minute episode, if there's something worth talking about. That way I can still provide you guys with some content, those of you who really love listening to the show and don't want it to go anywhere. And I can also take some of the pressure off myself, feeling like I need to, dedicate so much time to this from week to week. So the sort of tentative plan right now is to just come back when there's something to talk about. Once again, whether that be an email or emails that I may get, something news related, less pressure, shorter episodes, and then hopefully we both can have some fun here talking about stuff. So here I am already back with another episode. I had a friend of mine who sent me a text message earlier today. And in the message, it was basically a Facebook link to a post that mentioned that Dragon Ball Daima recently won an award for the best anime series and an awards ceremony called, the Astra Awards. Okay, the Astra Awards. Now, I've always admitted from day one that no matter how I feel about Dragon Ball Daima, I'm sure there's a lot of people that enjoyed it, right? I mean, I haven't done a ton of research to see what other people's opinions on it are, but just from me talking to some of you guys about it, some of my listeners about it, I know some of you guys enjoyed it and some of you guys didn't. And that's totally fine, right? It's 100% subjective. Things that didn't work for me may have worked for you and vice versa. Totally cool. Everything's good there. What I was not expecting by any stretch of the imagination was that Dragon Ball Daima would win any awards. Okay. No, sorry. Let me rephrase that. That Dragon Ball Daima would win an award for best anime series. Okay. Other awards, 100%. Animation awards, voice acting awards, stuff like that. Sound design, of course. But I'm a little bit taken aback that Dragon Ball Daima actually won an award for best anime series. Okay. So what that made me wonder is, and this is something that I don't really talk about much on my podcast. I'm always talking about my opinions and how I felt about a thing. But what I never really talk about is how other people may have felt about it. So that made me curious to say, okay, well, if Dragon Ball Daima won an award for best anime series, clearly there are other people out there that enjoy this show a lot more than me. So I'm curious to see what their thoughts are and what they may have gotten from it that I didn't get. So that's basically what we're going to talk about here for a little bit. Is I'm very, very curious to see, we're going to talk a little bit about these Astro Awards and what that may mean or not mean. And then I want to read some reactions across the internet just that I found from people who enjoyed Dragon Ball Daima and maybe some people who didn't, just to get an overall sort of grasp on what the overall opinions seem to be on this show. Okay, so it's no secret that I am not a fan of Dragon Ball Daima, largely speaking. I mean, some of you may be listening to my podcast for the first time and saying, well, why are you doing a podcast about it? Well, I didn't know. I didn't know that I was ultimately going to end up not liking it, right? I mean, I stopped the podcast after episode 10 because I just wasn't enjoying talking about the show from week to week. But clearly there are plenty of people out there that do enjoy it. So let's talk a little bit about all of that and beyond. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about on this here episode. Okay. So, starts off here. I get the text message from my friend. I'm surprised that it won an award for best anime series. But my first question is, well, what's the Astro Awards? Who are these people? Because I've never heard of them. Right. But I haven't heard of everything. There are plenty of these organizations out there that will have award ceremonies, and they have panels, and they judge different things based on different criteria. And some of them I'm familiar with and some of them I'm not. And this just happens to be one that I wasn't familiar with. So the Astro Awards is put on by a group of individuals known as the Hollywood Creative Alliance. Okay. And according to their website, the Hollywood Creative, this is hollywoodcreative.org. Hollywood Creative Alliance, commonly referred to as HCA, is a 501c6 membership-based not-for-profit organization. Its diverse and inclusive membership includes critics, entertainment journalists, content creators, industry insiders, and creatives with a shared passion for celebrating excellence in entertainment. Okay, now the reason why I felt like it was very, very important to see who was behind this award ceremony, because I'm not trying to take anything away from Dragon Ball Daima. Okay, I'm not saying they don't deserve the award or anything, but I think it's generally understood that a lot of these award ceremonies have different levels of legitimacy to them, or authenticity, or however you want to look at it, right? Sometimes these organizations are made up of a group of people who don't know shit about the thing that they're handing out awards for. You know, sometimes it's a group of just rich people who somehow got the authority to hand out awards. And this is why a lot of people feel like awards don't mean anything. I'm not one of those people, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that this award does not mean anything because I've never heard of this award organization, right? I mean, because that's not fair to them. I don't want to take anything away from Dragon Ball Daima and the writers and creators who did a good job in their own way creating a show based on a franchise that I love. Okay. But if I received an award for something and if someone told me it didn't mean anything, well, I would be pissed. Right. So I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything. I just think it's important to understand the people that are involved in giving out these awards. So I'm very, very happy to see that it includes critics, entertainment journalists, content creators, industry insiders, and creatives. Okay. Now, it doesn't get into any more detail than that. Okay. So once you break that down, who knows how that may actually pan out. But it's nice to know there's some people that are involved in this world that are a part of this panel. Okay. Now, how many of those actual people are actual fans of Dragon Ball? We don't know. And I would argue that it probably doesn't matter, right? Because a series should be able to stand on its own. A movie should be able to stand on its own. You shouldn't necessarily have to be a fan of the franchise to enjoy it. You shouldn't necessarily have to have seen the prequel to it or part one of it to enjoy it. I mean, you're going to enjoy it more if you've seen part one, right? If you're watching a sequel, stands to reason you should enjoy it a lot more if you watch the first one, right? Did I say prequel or sequel a second ago? I meant sequel. Okay. But with that being said, you know, does Daima count as a sequel? It is certainly a continuation of Dragon Ball Z. So I don't know how many of those people saw Dragon Ball Z. And that may have played a role in it. Who knows? Right? Because think about it. A lot of us as fans, as real Dragon Ball fans, people that I don't like to use the term real Dragon Ball fans because that's, you know, I've been accused of not being a real Dragon Ball fan before, and it's just ridiculous to me, right? So I'm gonna rewind that for a second and just say fans of Dragon Ball, you know, Dragon Ball Z. Like we're gonna view this stuff a little bit more differently than the average person will, because we're gonna be thinking about things like canon, right? And we're gonna be thinking about, oh, well, this character's acting differently than they acted in Dragon Ball Z. They would never do this, because these are the kinds of things that I talk about when I'm doing my reviews of this kind of thing, right? So I don't know how many of those people on that panel consist of diehard Dragon Ball fans. Maybe not many. And maybe that's why they were able to view this in a different way and in a different light than, say, you know, a hardcore fan may view it in. So these are the things that have got me interested, that I'm curious about. Okay, so but you know, all in all, I've never heard of this award ceremony, and I want to say also that you know, Dragon Ball Daima had some pretty good competition from what I'm understanding in this category for best anime. Okay, so I'm going to switch over here to an article on Crunchyroll that says here, Dragon Ball Daima named Best Anime Series at 2025 Astra TV Awards. Okay, and it also says right under there, Alex Lee takes home Best Lead Voiceover Performance for Solo Leveling. So if you listen to the previous episode of the podcast, you know that I also watched Solo Leveling, and I really actually enjoyed that show quite a bit. And that is a very well-deserved award for Alex Lee. So I'm very happy to hear about that. Let's see. It says the 2025 Astra TV Awards took place on June 10th, and 2 big anime titles ended up taking home awards in the process. Dragon Ball Daima won Best Anime Series in the second year of the category's existence, and Alex Lee won Best Lead Voiceover Performance for Solo Leveling Season 2. Dragon Ball Daima was up against some tough competition, including Dan. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. If you guys listen to me, you know I don't watch a lot of anime, generally speaking, so I don't, I'm not familiar with these shows. Fire Force Season 3, Lazarus, Solo Leveling Season 2, and The Apothecary Diaries Season 2. Now, I know I have some anime fans that listen to my podcast, including my friend who sent the text early today. I haven't seen any of those other shows other than Solo Leveling, so I can't speak to the quality of those shows. But is it fair to say, in your opinion, if you've seen those other shows, is Dragon Ball Daima better than those shows? In your opinion? Obviously, it's all opinion, right? I'd be curious to know. So if you've seen these other shows and you have any thoughts on that, send me an email at rockthedragonpodcast@gmail.com. I'd be curious to see if this holds up for you. If you feel like Dragon Ball Daima was the best anime out of those that were nominated. But it's not, it's not only saying that it's better than those that were nominated. I mean, it's saying that it's better than all of the anime that would have been even submitted for nomination. Okay. And I don't have the information in front of me of how many different series that might have been, but I know a lot of anime is released every year. Okay. So, this is saying that Dragon Ball Daima is the best out of all the anime that was created that fits in this season time frame for their award ceremony, that were submitted and received nominations, which I don't know how many that was, but this is saying that it's the best. Now, here's the thing. Am I surprised to hear that? 100%. Dragon Ball Daima, to me, is the worst anime in the Dragon Ball franchise. I preferred GT over this, but at the same time, I can say that it was only 20 episodes, right? So that it's almost like it's unfair to even judge it compared to some of these other series that have, 50 plus episodes, or the other seasons of Dragon Ball projects that have over 100 episodes. But in all fairness, that could have worked to their benefit as well. That could be a con as well as a pro. A con can be, well, we only had 20 episodes, and so we weren't able to tell as much of our story as we wanted to. But a pro could have been, well, you've only got 20, you got 20 episodes, man. Like, you can have a much more condensed story. You can get in and get out and just tell your best stuff and save your best stuff and only put that in there and get out of there quick. So it just depends on how you look at it. Now, another thing that happens a lot of times with award shows, and once again, not trying to take anything away from Dragon Ball Daima, but just being fully transparent here, is that sometimes a show, an actor, a director, an IP is solely recognized because of what it is, because of its status, because of its prestige, because of its legendary, history, right? And we've seen this before. We've seen situations with certain movies and actors where it almost felt like maybe they didn't have the best performance that year, or maybe they didn't have the best movie that year. But they were given an award because of who they were and the prestige and the history, the body of work that they have achieved before, right? So just to touch on every base is here, there could be a possibility that Dragon Ball Daima was nominated here and was given this award because it's Dragon Ball. Because I feel like if you're going to have a best anime series in any award ceremony or any awards, program or whatever you want to call it, and there's a new Dragon Ball anime, you definitely at least have to consider that show because it's Dragon Ball. It's one of the, if not the biggest anime of all time, and Dragon Ball is still pretty huge in the United States as well. And this organization, the Astro Awards, unless I'm missing something, these people are based out in Los Angeles, California, largely probably made up of, American citizens. Okay. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that Dragon Ball Daima or Dragon Ball in general, is the most known anime in this country, especially over its competitors. Right. So once again, is it possible that they felt like Dragon Ball Daima should win this because this is an American sort of awards program and Dragon Ball is the biggest anime in this country and some of these other anime most people haven't even heard of? Maybe. Is it possible that this acknowledgement is coming because they felt like Akira Toriyama deserved, one more, award just from the body of work out of respect, something like that? Possible as well. It's also totally possible that that's not the case. And of course, it's also totally possible that these folks just really believe that this is the best anime series of the past year. Once again, this is a very, very specific organization here. I feel like most of us have never heard of the Astro Awards, and that's not to take anything away from them. But I just want to be transparent here and say that this is not like, the Golden Globes or the Emmys or something, right? Or or the Academy Awards, right? So I don't want to make it sound like this is on the same level of as those. But obviously there's enough of legitimacy there, and for a lot of these companies to be even submitting their series and their movies and their TV shows for nominations, well, then it must be legitimate enough, at least for that. So I don't want to take anything away from the awards people or Dragon Ball Daima. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how this show was, not only nominated, but won any sort of best anime series thing. But once again, that's based on my experience with it and my opinions on what I think of it. And that's why I'm curious to see what other people think, because it's very, very interesting to me. So what I wanted to do is I want to just jump around the internet and just check out a couple of reviews, good reviews, maybe some that aren't, just to get a general idea of what people out, other than myself, thought about Dragon Ball Daima. So one of the first things I did, of course, was go to Rotten Tomatoes, right? I could just go to YouTube or something like that and just read the comment section of a lot of videos. But that, for some, I feel like if people are going to take the time out to go to Rotten Tomatoes, go to IMDb, type out a review, then they're probably reviewing the series from a different lens than the average fan might be viewing it from. So I feel like those reviews would be a little bit more thought out versus someone just saying in the comments that, Daima sucked or something like that, So, first things first, it looks like Dragon Ball Daima actually got, okay, sorry, I'm stalling here while I pull it up again because the window closed out. Okay. And stalling again. And here we go. Okay. So the very first time I actually pulled this up, I think I was looking at the wrong page because it Dragon Ball Daima had a 100% fresh tomato meter, which I was thinking to myself, well, that can't be right. Because, I mean, it just can't be right. Nothing gets, it's very rare that anything gets 100%, let alone this show. But I think that was the wrong page, or maybe that was, I don't know, because it only had like 5 reviews on it. So it's like, well, that doesn't matter. If only 5 people review something and all 5 of them like it, that's technically 100% positive review, but only 5 people reviewed it. So you can't even go by that, right? So I found another page here where the tomato meter doesn't even have a score. And maybe that's because they didn't get enough reviews. Now, for those of you not familiar with Rotten Tomatoes, I'm going to try to, sometimes I could be wrong here, okay? And I say that a lot here. I could be mistaken here. But the tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes consists of only critics, okay? These are people that are verified critics who have, credentials and all that kind of stuff. And then there's also the popcorn meter, which is just like general audiences, okay? Which can essentially be anyone who saw the movie. And they've even broken it down even further than that to where, people that they can verify that have actually seen the movie versus people who could just be reviewing something that they haven't even watched. You may hear about this sometimes. Sometimes movies and TV shows get review bombed just because people are mad about the movie coming out, or they're mad about the director, or they're mad about an actor that was cast in the role. So then they would go and just give a bunch of negative reviews of something that they haven't even seen. So what Rotten Tomatoes has done is found a way to sort of, filter that kind of stuff out so you can make sure you're only reading reviews from people who have actually seen the thing. Okay. So if we're just talking straight up tomato meter here, which once again, there is no percentage here, and that's probably because there's not enough of them, but there are only 8 listed. And I'll just read a couple of these. A man from Cinema Debate says Dragon Ball Daima is a love letter to 40 years of an iconic series. While some of the writing can feel narratively thin, fans of the franchise will be in awe of the animation, voice acting, and reveals. And that was actually a positive rating for him. He gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Okay, there's another one here that says, for what it's worth, Daima has given fans nothing but what they want and still make it as underwhelming as possible. 6 out of 10 on that one. Okay. The next one says here, Daima was a fun exercise in Toriyama flexing his more childlike adventurous side. But as we got closer to the end, that melted away, descending into an admittedly well-animated fight fest, just like the original manga this was created to celebrate. That's a 4 out of 5. Next one here, this long-running action series takes more of a comedy approach in its latest installment. But that's not really even a review. I mean, these are just summaries, by the way. I'm not actually clicking on the full review because I don't have time to read all of that. Okay. The next one says Dragon Ball Daima Episode 1 Conspiracy is the perfect appetizer that gets the audience hungry for more action. It's entirely possible this will be the best Dragon Ball fans have eaten in years. Okay, and the next one says here, the late great Akira Toriyama's final Dragon Ball project proves he still had tricks, humor, and unique eye for continuity up his sleeve. Okay, so one thing I want to mention here is that when I was doing a quick review of some of these reactions from across the internet that I read, is that a lot of them were submitted before they watched the entire series. So I noticed that there was a pattern of people being really pumped about Dragon Ball Daima, and specifically talking about the first 2 or 3 episodes, because we have to remember that the first 2 or 3 episodes was released as a movie in cinemas in North America, right? So a lot of what I'm seeing here could be referring to that. And if you go back and listen to my reviews of the first 2 or 3 episodes of Dragon Ball Daima, I thought it was pretty good too. I mean, it started off fine, right? It wasn't until later on where the real problem started to kick in. So I don't know if this is even a fair, if these reviews are even fair to read. Let's go over to some of the verified audience members. Because because these are people that aren't necessarily being paid to review these things, and and it stands to reason they might actually be more fans in here. Let's see if we could find one that has some more than just one sentence. Let's see. Great episodes, awesome quality. I wish it was longer. Brando says the new cast and return of Stephanie brings such a fun and enjoyable new way to experience Dragon Ball. I can't wait to see them deliver in critical moments of the story. Okay, once again, this is a review from someone who hadn't watched the entire series yet. Right? Let's see. Highly recommended to any Dragon Ball fans. It was great to watch Dragon Ball in the theater. Honestly, even if they just played older Dragon Ball Z Super movies or episodes, I'd show up for those too. Okay, so this was the theater. Okay, maybe I've been reading the theater reactions the whole time and not the actual show. And maybe the one that I found at first was the show. A little bit confused, but people seem to be pretty. And look, I know that this is a little bit, whatever, but I'm not, I'm not, this isn't a news source. Okay. I'm just a guy talking about Dragon Ball on the internet. So if I don't fact check the shit out of everything, that's why. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So most of this was just reviews for the first 3 episodes, it looks like, but that's why I didn't just stick with only Rotten Tomatoes, right? I also checked out IMDb. Once again, another source that involves a certain level of, more, at least a little bit more effort than, say, just leaving like a YouTube comment, right? Okay, so the featured comment here of the user reviews on IMDb, the first one says here, 9 out of 10, Dragon Ball Daima, a beautiful goodbye from Akira Toriyama. I was fortunate enough to catch the debut of Dragon Ball Daima, and I thought I should write a short, spoiler-free review for those who still haven't watched it. From a visual standpoint, this is the best a TV show centered around Dragon Ball has ever looked, and excluding movies like Dragon Ball Super Broly, of course. And then they talk about some of the specifics of the people that worked on it, so I'm going to skip that. Let's see. There are some 3D CGI parts here and there, but they are very minimal and not distracting at all. It is still mostly 2D production, unlike Superhero the movie. And then there's some comments about the cinematography, the aesthetic, the voice acting. And it closes out by saying, I think this is a truly fitting way to pay tribute to Akira Toriyama, truly the best production a Dragon Ball TV series has ever had. Now, here's the thing. Because I read this one earlier. It seems like most of the compliments here are on the visuals, right? And that seems to be something that I've noticed in most of the positive comments that I've read about the show. Everyone's talking about how awesome it looked. Okay. Well, there's no debate there, right? Dragon Ball Daima looked incredible. The animation was incredible. The cinematography was incredible. If this was a conversation about Dragon Ball Daima winning an award for best animation, well, there would be no discussion here, right? I mean that the animation was great, especially considering what happened with Super, right? But that's not what it won, right? It won best anime series. So to me, that means overall, that means best story, character development, plot, writing, and animation and cinematography and all of that, right? So yeah, that seems to be talking mostly about the visuals. Next one here, let's see. 9 out of 10. Fantastic start to Dragon Ball Daima. The initial reanimation of key parts of Dragon Ball Z, Majin Buu saga looked very crisp and clean. Okay, once again, from another person that didn't watch the entire series, I don't understand this concept of reviewing things when you haven't seen all of it yet. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, if anything, these reviews should be for individual episodes and not for the actual series as a whole. Because if you haven't seen the whole series, how can you give it a 9 out of 10? Because if I was if I had to give it a rating after the first 2 or 3 episodes, I probably would have given it an 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10, right? Because it started off well and then it turned into shit for like another 15 episodes. Okay, here's one, which is interesting because they gave it an 8 out of 10, but this is the review. It says, nothing happens. Dragon Ball Daima started like it feels like a missed opportunity in an otherwise legendary franchise. While Dragon Ball as a whole is known for its engaging plots and intense action, this spin-off fails to deliver the same level of excitement in the first half. The pacing is incredibly slow, with episodes that seem to drag on without significant developments. Waiting an entire week for an episode only to find nothing of importance is happening is frustrating. Then it becomes Dragon Ball again at the end. Though they should explain how this includes in the existing story. Instead of investing in a side project like Daima, the creators should focus. Okay, they're going into something else here. Okay, overall, Daima lacks the depth and momentum that we expect from the series, leaving us disappointed and longing for more meaningful content in the first half, then becomes better. Okay, now that's a review that I would largely agree with, except they still gave it an 8 out of 10, which is a little bit confusing to me. I mean, listen, I guess if I had to give Dragon Ball Daima a rating, it'd be like a 5 out of 10, maybe a 4.5. And trust me, it only gets that because of the animation and the voice actors. Okay. And there were some interesting characters and there were some interesting plot threads that were introduced there. But as an overall series, it was a fail. I mean, it was mostly bad episodes. And if you have more bad episodes than good, sorry, but that's a fail. I'll read one more here. Let's see here. 10 out of 10, returning fan. With the release of Sparking Zero and Daima, these felt like oh, wait a second. This is a video game review. Wait, no. Sorry. No, it's not. Okay. These felt like 2002 all over again with Budokai and DBZ airing on Cartoon Network. While I won't say much, all I can say is that this is a love letter by the creator before he passed away, and anybody who adores Dragon Ball should give it a watch. From the art style to the story, finally being able to see the manga art style be replicated in anime with Goku's manga outfit finally being drawn is a dream come true for someone who loves to see deep cuts related to the manga being drawn. The sound quality and music all reflect this as well, and I'm really glad with the revelations we've seen so far. Okay, so a lot of comments in there about the art style and Toriyama. These are things I talked about, right? Let's not let the fact that Toriyama passed away, I don't think, as a creator, as someone who's created many, many things, the last thing I would want is for someone to convince themselves that the thing that I made was so great just because I died. That you're not doing me a favor. I think people are a little bit afraid to speak their true feelings on Dragon Ball Daima because of the fact that Toriyama passed away and it was his last thing. Hey, we all love Toriyama. Rest in peace, Toriyama. Toriyama still created Dragon Ball Z, one of the greatest things of all time. And that's great. That's fantastic, phenomenal. This was just not that good. Also, it ends with saying that I'm really glad with the revelations we've seen so far. Okay, once again, of someone who left a review without watching the entire series. So I don't, I don't know. It's weird. I don't see as many reviews of the entire series, right? But I did manage to find one, okay, for sure, over on IGN. So a lot of people, if you're a gamer at all, you're probably very familiar with IGN. Okay, so these are, credible people. A lot of people don't agree with their reviews, but there's no questioning whether or not they're, credible in terms of having actual anime fans, actual gamers and stuff like that actually participate in it. And I'm not going to read the entire review here because I'm not really seeing a good, okay, here's a little bit of a summary. And this is a 7 out of 10 here. It was given a 7 out of 10, okay? It says here, the verdict is ending the day before the 1-year anniversary of Akira Toriyama's death. Dragon Ball Daima sails through a new era of the franchise to end on a high note. Though Goku and the core cast of characters didn't really learn anything from getting chibi-fied, The trip through the demon realm found fresh ways to play the hits, culminating in a new ultimate hype moment in Super Saiyan 4. And they gave it a 7 out of 10. This is someone who, Leanne Butkovic, sorry, I'm probably mispronouncing that, but this is a full season review. Okay, so here's an example of someone who saw the entire series and still felt like it was more good than bad, and that's totally okay. So if most of the people on this panel over at the Astro Awards felt this way, then it stands to reason they would have felt like it was the best anime, of the year. But you do admit here in this review that they didn't learn anything by being turned into kids. And then it ended on a high note, which once again, I would argue was just because it was fighting and transformations. The same two things that I feel like Dragon Ball is just turning into, where there's very little concern with plot or story or character development or anything or the writing. It all seems to be coming down to flashy transformations now. And I think there's a large part of the audience that as long as we get that, we'll be satisfied. So listen, I didn't want to keep this too long. I think there was one more thing I wanted to look into here. Maybe not. Okay. So basically, this show was awarded with Best Anime Series at the Astro Awards. Struck a little bit of a curiosity into me to look around and see what other people thought and what other people felt about it. I did read more than just those few on my own, and I saw a lot of comments that agreed with me that said that, plot holes and fan service and transformations that didn't feel warranted or justified or earned. So there's a lot of people out there that feel that way as well. But I mostly wanted to focus on the positive things that people were saying, because I was hoping to have a better understanding of how this show could have been nominated for and ultimately won Best Anime Series, especially with Solo Leveling being in there, which I feel was way better than Dragon Ball Daima. Okay, and this is coming from someone who's a massive Dragon Ball fan, but you can't let that bias you. You have to be able to pick out something that sucks, and if it sucks, you have to be able to just fucking say it sucks. Okay, and Dragon Ball Daima sucked. I'm sorry. But it's okay, because I'm still a fan. I'm still gonna be a fan to the day that I die of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball related properties. So I hope you guys found some enjoyment in that. If you have any comments or questions or anything you'd like to add about that for our email segment called What Are You Saying? Send me an email at rockthedragonpodcast@gmail.com. I like to come back every now and then and just do little things like this, little quick episodes where I talk about something that stood out to me in the news, or I'm reading your emails and etc. So if you got anything to say, just let me know, okay? So until next time, for Rock the Dragon Podcast, my name is Tim Bridgewater. I will see you guys pretty soon here. Until next time, keep on rocking the dragon.